What's up everyone, welcome to the video. We are here breaking down the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway for Sunday, September 11th at around 3 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, this is the first race that's going to overlap with the NFL, so it sucks, it is what it is. But I do appreciate everyone that is still here for the NASCAR season. Looking forward to this race. We have seen the 1.5s and the intermediate tracks produce some pretty good racing this year in this aero package, so hopefully it's not a complete wreck fest, but hopefully it's at least a little bit enjoyable to watch. And I thought the race at Darlington last weekend was really awesome. It's just the ending was quite cruel to me. Quite cruel. I had a lot of Martin Truex Jr. He had the best car in the entire field. Had what, a 5-6 second lead to end the race, and ended up his engine went out. Then I had a lot of Kyle Busch. His engine went out after he reclaimed the lead after Martin Truex Jr. went down. Had a lot of Kevin Harvick. He caught on fire at the end. Things were going quite smoothly, but took a very south turn. But it is what it is. I did have some lineups that still made their way through it because it was an absolute mess of a race. And who knew that Kyle Larson being down 3 laps at one point would be one of the better expensive plays on the slate. But anyway, if you're brand new here, which I doubt you are because football is starting, only the true diehards are still here. My name is Chris Pennell, typically always breaking down NASCAR DFS slates each and every single weekend on this channel. But I do also like to post NFL content. I got a couple videos out for this week if you want to check those out. And if you do end up enjoying today's free content, the only thing I ask in return is if you can leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and feel free to leave a comment agreeing or disagreeing with anything I say throughout the duration of today's video. Or if you want to tell me hi or I suck, you are free to do that as well. And don't forget to check out the sponsor of the show, Prize Picks. They do make these videos possible. And as of right now, if you are new signing over on the website, you can get a free instant deposit match bonus up to $100. There's no strings attached. It is free money. Use it to your advantage. You just have to use promo code CPEN when you sign up, either at PrizePicks.com or you can use the link down below. And they're also running the Tom Brady promo this week, which I'm sure you've heard many times, but you just have to hit the over on 0.5 passing yards. Pair that with another prop that you like, and you're well on your way to getting some nice cash heading into the weekend. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. But that being said, I think that's all for the plug. So without further ado, let's get into the preview of this week's race. And as previously mentioned, this is your Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway. There's your outline of the track. Nothing too special here. Just a large oval 1.5 mile cookie cutter track for the most part. Tire wear not going to be a huge issue, but if you were watching practice, there was some fall off. So, I mean, tires will matter a little bit, but nothing crazy like we saw at Darlington last weekend or some other tracks. 267 laps on the schedule this weekend, just under 190 total Dominator points available. So while Dominator points aren't as important as it would be at a short track or Darlington last week, you're still going to want a couple Doms per lineup. Now, there is some pretty good place differential plays on the slate, including some big names starting closer to the back. So we'll talk about some strategy with that. But at the very least, I would say you're going to want at least one lap leader. Now, unless there's a bunch of wrecks up front and all these guys are just pure place differential plays where there's not as many lap leaders because they keep interchanging or those guys happen to wreck out, sure, maybe that's the case where you can go full place differential. But if it just doesn't completely just bust open and a whole bunch of chaos happens, I think for the most part you're going to want 1 to 2 Doms per lineup. And if you're wondering my overall thoughts on the pricing this weekend, I don't really have any too crazy takes here. I mean, we do have, 6 guys in 10K and above for a 267 lap race. Maybe it's a bit much, maybe it's not. I feel like it might really just kind of be on par. We only have one of those drivers in the 11K range, and that's Hamlin, and he's barely over 11K. So I think overall, pricing is fine this weekend. I think we got some cheaper potential Doms this week, so it should make pricing quite flexible as far as voting lineups are concerned. But if you do want access to the sheet that I'm previewing for you guys for free over on YouTube, there's a lot more to it. You can get access to it with the link down below in the description or in the pinned comment down below. Projections for all sites, sim scores, optimized ownership projections, and the Discord, which always popping 24/7. And also, I got the NFL content in full force, spreadsheets for showdown slates, main slates, and the optimized ownership projections, all that fun stuff for the NFL as well if you want to check that out. We had a great showdown slate. Hopefully that does translate today on Sunday. But anyway, getting into it, we'll start top with Denny Hamlin, $11,100, the most expensive drivers on both sites. I get it. Toyota absolutely crushed Kansas earlier in the season, and Hamlin has had a ton of speed at these kind of track types this year. Opened up as the favorite, and I will say these odds are not updated. And after practice and qualifying, I don't think Denny Hamlin is going to be the favorite anymore. But it's not good in practice. Obviously sucked in qualifying. Not expecting him to be the favorite whatsoever. I assume Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson probably get bumped up to being the favorite in this race. Maybe Ross Chastain rise up a little bit, but if I had to guess, I think Reddick will probably move to the favorite. I think Bowman's odds will get bumped up as well. But for Denny, starting all the way back in 25th, again, practice wasn't great for him. I do have concerns about him getting up front and dominating at some point, but Kansas has been a really good track for him. In the past 6 races, he's got 2 wins, 4 top 5s, and a good chunk of laps led. And if you're looking at his finishes at similar tracks this season, 3rd at Michigan, 1st at Pocono, 1st at Charlotte, 4th at Kansas. Result was not good at Las Vegas, but he had a very fast car there, and the Toyotas just sucked at Auto Club. And if you're looking at the 8-race sample size in total here, pretty much the overall best numbers. So I don't want to go too crazy about overreacting to practice and qualifying. I think they'll make the right adjustments here. So I'm definitely going to have some Denny Hamlin exposure, but practice and qualifying just ended, so I haven't really had time to comb through all the numbers to really digest practice as much. We are going through this together for the first time, so you're getting my first reactions to the entire slate. I'll have my more polished and updated thoughts over on Patreon. Unfortunately, no live show this weekend with football starting up, but I have to imagine Hamlin's going to improve upon the starting position. It's just really a matter of how good is he going to score compared to some of these other guys that at least have the potential to lead laps, like a Kyle Larson, like a Ross Chastain, or like a Tyler Reddick. So we'll kind of talk about that and look through things, but I am interested to see how he stacks up, and especially ownership-wise, being this expensive. Kyle Busch, $10,900, the second most expensive driver on both sites, and pretty similar of a play to Denny Hamlin. He's also been great at similar tracks this season, just didn't really light it up too much in practice in the early run, got a bit better, but you got to imagine there was less cars that ran longer laps, but still in the long run, top 10 in the 10 lap, 7th in the 15, 5th in the 20, and 2nd in the 25. So I don't think he's going to have a terrible car or anything, and starting in 20th, it's hard not to like either of these drivers. It looks like Busch showed a little bit more speed, but we didn't see Denny Hamlin really make too much of a long run, so I feel like they're going to be pretty similar. And we also just got news that Kyle Busch is heading to RCR. Not that that makes for a narrative or anything, but we do know where he is going to land next season, so that's pretty cool to get some bombshell news. Like, it just dropped, so maybe I'm breaking the news for you. I'm not totally sure, but it is nice to see that we finally got an update on the Kyle Busch situation. But he's also been really good at Kansas. And if you're looking at his numbers this year, or finishes at similar tracks, wrecked out at Michigan, but 2nd at Pocono, 2nd at Charlotte, 3rd at Kansas, 4th at Vegas. I don't see a reason why he can't be great here. I think both him and Denny Hamlin are excellent plays, but they're also very similar plays, and they're pretty expensive, so it's going to be really hard to just jam in both because we don't really expect them to lead laps, especially early on. They can be stage 3 contenders, but it'll be interesting to see how quick they can move through the field. Kyle Larson, $10,700. He is starting in 7th. I feel like he might come in lower owned than the 2 above, but I think he's got a much better chance of getting up front and dominating. He had a great car in practice, 2nd in the 5 laps, 2nd in the 10 laps, some really good long run speed. And he's also really good here at Kansas. He's got the best drive rating the past few seasons, the best average running position, and by far the most laps led per race. And he's also equally been great at similar tracks this season. 7th at Michigan, 7th at Pocono, 9th at Charlotte, 2nd at Kansas, was really good in that race. It was either him or Kurt Busch to win. 2nd at Vegas, and 1st at Auto Club. Just doesn't have quite the dominator points as some of these other drivers. Like Denny Hamlin's blowing him away in dominator points this season at these track types. Kyle Busch has been better, Kyle Busch is blowing him away. Denny Hamlin's been better. Ross Chastain's been better. So it's not like Larson last season where he was just way above the entire field. He's been good, but he hasn't been truly elite this season at these track types. But I think the car looks good, and I'll definitely have some interest in tournaments. Chase Elliott, you can kind of group him into that same situation as Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, which is what kind of makes it tough this weekend up top, because you have 3 very similar plays, 3 big names, but they're all expensive. And I'm not 100% sure they're going to be able to get up front and lead some laps. I think I would probably prefer the 2 Toyotas over Chase Elliott, but I'm going to have to get some exposure to Chase. He just hasn't been as good as some of these other guys at these track types this year, but he definitely has the upside. I mean, he finished 3rd at Pocono, 33rd at Charlotte, but he had a really good car in that race. He was up front leading laps, finished 29th at Kansas earlier in the season. Just the overall numbers aren't going to be as pretty, but he is capable of getting up front. It's just I probably prefer the 2 Toyotas a little bit better because they've been overall better at these track types this season. Martin Truex Jr., $10,300. He is starting in 12th, another heartbreaker for Truex last week, and another week where I played a lot of Truex. It was going really well, really well. He was definitely the best play on the slate. It's just he can't really account for the engine going out at the end of the race, but he definitely had the car, and he was well on his way to winning, but had a good car in practice, 11th in the 5 lap, and then top 5 in the 10 and 15 lap runs. It's just really hard to trust the guy, but he's very good at Kansas, and at similar tracks this year. The finishes aren't as good as some of his teammates, but still 6th, 9th, 12th, 6th, 8th, and 13th. He's been pretty consistent. It's just I do worry about him being able to get up front and dominate, so I'll probably have some limited Truex exposure, but I'll try to get to a little bit in tournaments, but I think I would rather get to his teammates Hamlin and Busch at that point that start 10, 15 spots further back, and I feel like they're going to have similar finishing position upside, so I'd rather just get the place differential. Then you have Arash Chastain right below him at $10,000 and only 10.5 over on FanDuel. He's starting in 5th, and I assume he's going to get up front at some point. It's just a matter of actually finishing the race for Chastain because he's great every single week. It's just something happens where the car breaks or he wrecks. Like last week, he was really good at Darlington, had one of the best cars in the field, and then his car breaks, so go figure. But very fast in practice, which we usually don't see Ross fast on Saturday, usually just fast on Sundays. But second the 1 lap in practice, third in the 5 lap, top 5 in qualifying. I definitely think he's going to get up front at some point. But like I said, just a matter of actually putting a complete race down. But he's just been really fast at these track types this year. The second most dominator points per race, only behind Kyle Busch. Definitely going to have a lot of exposure to Chastain in tournaments. But cash games, it gets a little tough because we know the risks with Ross. But the upside is very, very high. And on FanDuel, at that price point, I'm going to have a ton of. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have potentially the best play on the slate here with Tyler Reddick, $9,800 on DraftKings. He is starting on the pole. I imagine the odds are going to shift in his favor to be the favorite, but he completely swept practice. Good in the short run, good in the long run. He was first in each and every single category. He's also been very fast at these track types this year, but he can always be kind of a risky driver because I feel like a lot of times Reddick is running very well, but just has to come down pit road at some point because either hits the wall or something or push him too hard. But at $9,800, starting the pole, he has a ton of speed. I don't see a reason not to play him. I'll probably get there in cash games. The thing is, though, it makes it tough because then you have all these 10K drivers that have a ton of place differential with Hamlin in 25th, Kyle Busch in 20th, Elliott in 22nd. But I really want a potential lap leader, and Reddick looks like he's got a car where he could dominate a good chunk of this race. And if he could lead the majority of stage 1, I think you're sitting pretty at below $10,000, so I definitely want to get a lot of Reddick exposure. If you don't want to go with the pole sitter in cash games, I get it, but I would definitely try to get to some in tournaments. Christopher Bell, $9,600. He's starting in 4th. I think he's another really good tournament target here. He was also very fast in practice and qualifying, 3rd in the 1 lap, 4th in the 5 lap, and he has just been so consistent at these track types this year. I know he finished 26th at Michigan, but 6th at Pocono, 5th at Charlotte, 5th at Kansas, 10th at Las Vegas, ranked out at Auto Club where he finished 36th, but very consistent these tracks this year. He's had the speed at all tracks pretty much for the most part. I know he doesn't have quite the name value as his JGR teammates, but he's been really good. So I definitely like this price tag on Bell below $10,000, and he can certainly be a dominator, but I do think he should be a top 3 contender here, and he can definitely pick up fast laps along the way. Joey Logano, $9,300. He is pretty cheap on both sites, only $9,000 over on FanDuel, but he's starting in 2nd. I wouldn't say I'm super excited about Joey, but he just keeps kind of being annoying the past month now. He finished 4th in Michigan. Hasn't really been great at these track types this year, and it's not like he really blew you away in practice. I mean, if you're looking at his numbers, 13th, 22nd, and 18th, but he just makes really good qualifying runs. Like, he was not that fast at Darlington last week, but qualified on the pole and just was kind of annoying all day. But when we got in dirty air, we saw he wasn't as good. But I mean, at this price point, I mean, in tournaments, I think you have to have a little bit of interest in Joey, but I'm not super excited about it. William Byron, he's cheap on FanDuel. I guess pretty cheap on DraftKings as well with $9,100. And he finally got right last week where he had a good race. I believe he ended up being in the optimal lineup. Scoring around 53, 54 points. Starting in the top 10 here, though, wasn't great in practice, 20th, and 11th. Looking at his finishes at these track types this year, 12th, 14th, 32nd, 16th, 5th, and 34th. I'm not really excited about William Byron too much. Now, he was fast at the Kansas race early on, ended up running into some issues. He's a tournament play only for me, but I'm not loving Byron. I'll get to him a little bit in 150 max settings, but I don't think I'll play him in a 3 max or anything. Definitely not in cash games. Dropping down to the 8K range, we have Ryan Blaney making an appearance. I feel like this is a pretty low price point on him. He's starting in 17th. Didn't have a bad car in practice, top 10 across the board. It's just that these tracks this year, we haven't really seen the Fords be too impressive all that often. He did finish 5th in Michigan, but 35th, 29th, 12th, 36th, 18th. Practice speed-wise, at his price point for where he's starting, if he can crack the top 8, that's not a bad day if he can get some fast laps here and there. So I don't think he's the worst cash game play, but I'll probably look elsewhere in tournaments. Kevin Harvick, $8,700. He's starting in 14th. Usually only get to him in short tracks usually in some of the road courses this year. But his price does make it appealing, and he did win the race at Michigan, albeit all the Toyotas dying at the end there, but very good racer at Kansas. Obviously, he's got the best average finish in the field the past few seasons. Didn't light it up in practice, but Harvick never really does. Like I said, won Michigan, finished third at Charlotte, but that was a wreck fest. It's really just been, he's avoided attrition for the most part. I think you can play him, but he's not somebody I'm just running to the fences to play. I'm not really excited about Kevin Harvick. I feel like he's a very similar player to Ryan Blaney, but Blaney showed a little bit more speed. But I just feel like also Harvick's a little bit more trustworthy as well. Daniel Suarez, $8,400. He is starting in 15th. Showed not too much speed in practice. Was good in the one lap though, where he was 11th, but then 19th, 19th, 15th, and 10th. Just didn't seem like his car was too great on the long run. And outside of a couple races, Daniel Suarez has not had a fun time with these track types this year. Finished 5th at Pocono, which was great. And then 4th at Auto Club, which was way in the beginning of the season. Was really strong at Charlotte, just had many issues during that race. He's a very, I just hate to keep saying it, but all three of these guys are just pretty much the same play. Although if I had to rank them, I'm probably putting a Blaney, Harvick, Suarez, and that's exactly how they're priced. But none of these guys really pop out too much to me. They're playable, don't get me wrong. It's just not anybody I'm really singling out for a single entry or a cash game or anything like that. Alex Bowman, $8,200. He's starting in 3rd. This could be a bit of a sneaky play. He was pretty strong in practice, top 10 across the board, and then top 4 in the long runs here. And he's not bad at Kansas. He's got an average finish of 10th here the past few seasons. He has a couple of top 10s and even a top 5 under his belt. And Bowman's actually been really good at these track types this year. 9th, 13th, 10th, 9th, 1st, and 25th. Just been very consistent. The problem is starting in 3rd, you need to be, Bowman was perfect in this race. You need to be staying up front, staying in the top 5, pick up some fast laps along the way, and you basically have to finish in the top 3, top 4 to make this work. So he's a very risky play. Definitely not a cash game play, and it'd be really tough to get to him in a 3 max, but once you kind of start expanding that to 20, 150 lineups, that's when I can start sprinkling in some Alex Bowman in case he ends up getting up front at some point, which honestly, I don't think would be the craziest thing if it happened. And I do imagine guys like Blaney, Harvick, and Suarez will have much higher ownership for where they're starting. And then Bubba Wallace, $8,000, kind of a very similar play to Alex Bowman in my opinion, but the Toyotas were very strong here in the spring, or whenever that was, the spring or the summer. I think it might have been late spring. I can't 100% remember. But Wallace, I mean, he's been good at these tracks this year when he stays clean. 2nd at Michigan, 10th at Pocono, finished 20th at Charlotte, but that's a wreck fest. We'll kind of cross that off. And then 10th at Kansas earlier in the season. He was pretty fast in practice as well until the 10 lap came around, but he was 4th in the 1 lap, 6th in the 5 lap. I think he should be battling for a top 8 all day. And at his price point, if he can sneak inside the top 5, not a bad day if he can mix in some fast laps. And like I said, with Bowman, these two are going to be much lower owned than guys like Harvick and Blaney. So I do like them as a pivot in tournaments. Dropping down to the 7K range, we'll start with Eric Jones here. He was awful in practice, $7,800. He's starting all the way back in 24th, so I do think people will get to him. And he's coming off a win last weekend at Darlington, which was awesome. I had a large chunk of Eric Jones on FanDuel, had a good chunk of him on DraftKings. It's just some other guys I wanted to ruin my day at the end because I had a lineup with the entire top 4. I had Truex, I had Busch, I had Denny Hamlin, and I had Eric Jones all in the same lineup, and it even had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in, who was like dead last because he wrecked at some point. But the entire lineup was crushing. Also had Cole Custer. I was about to win the June bug with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. wrecked out. Unfortunately, chaos happened where I lost Truex and I lost Kyle Busch. It still ended up cashing, but what could have been? What could have been? But I'm not really a big fan of Eric Jones here. I think he might be popular starting in 24th, especially coming off a win. But just was really slow in practice. But 8th at Michigan, 11th at Pocono, 14th at Charlotte, 3rd at Auto Club. Finished 32nd at Kansas earlier in the season. I'm not saying he's a terrible play. It's just in tournaments, I feel like I'd rather get some lower owned guys. I'll probably have some Eric Jones, but $8,000, I really wish he showed a little bit more speed for me in practice. But I wish try not to overreact too much to practice, but it was a little concerning. Austin Dillon, $7,700. He is starting in 11th. Like if it came down to playing Eric Jones or Austin Dillon, I'll side with Eric Jones there. But Austin Dillon was faster in practice, 16th in the 1 lap, 12th in the 5, and 8th in the 10. I'm not expecting too much out of Austin Dillon, but he typically is pretty consistent at these intermediate tracks for the most part, and that's kind of corresponded to this season. 13th at Michigan, 12th at Pocono, 13th at Kansas, 11th at Vegas, 2nd at Auto Club. I pretty much imagine Dillon to finish on 10th or 15th. It's just for where he's starting that makes him a pretty tough play. Austin Cindric overqualified to where he practiced. He was really slow in practice in Group 1. And he has finishes of 37th, 33rd, and 34th the past 3 races at some of the larger tracks. So starting in 8th, he's a guy that just really overqualifies and tends to fade during the race, and I expect that to happen once again. Chase Briscoe, I feel like I haven't played Chase Briscoe in forever, and I'm probably not going to do it here. He was 15th in the 1 lap in practice, 29th in the 5 lap, hasn't been overly impressive with these track types this year outside of a 4th place finish at Charlotte, where probably got a little bit lucky there with a lot of guys wrecking out. So I'll probably be pretty low on Briscoe, but the odds did just get updated for me, and as I thought, Tyler Reddick is the odds-on favorite now at plus 600. But Ross Chastain actually moved up to 2nd. I was kind of surprised. Now he's tied with a few people. You have Bell at plus 700 as well as Ross, and then you also have Larson at 700. So kind of what I thought would happen happened. I was a little surprised though because Ross has been kind of getting nailed in the books lately where they just don't really show him too much love. Then Joey Logano is at plus 800. I thought they would have maybe swapped Ross with Logano because he qualified a bit better, but I guess they maybe did look at practice a little bit. But anyway, we were at Briscoe, so let's move down here to Ty Gibbs, $7,200. He's starting in 16th. I actually do like Ty Gibbs here. I think he's a pretty interesting tournament play. Looked very fast in practice, had a top 12, top 10 car. Then was top 5 in the long run speed and was very good at Michigan earlier in the year. Probably should have finished top 5 if he didn't have that speeding penalty late in the race. So pretty similar track to Michigan in my opinion. So I think Ty Gibbs definitely playable in tournaments. I would say he's probably my favorite 7K driver that we've talked about so far. Brett Keselowski, $7,000. He's starting all the way back in 26. It wasn't amazing in practice, but looks like he has a top 20 car. I think he can definitely improve upon that top 26 or improve upon that 26th place starting position. Obviously very good at Kansas back in the day, no longer in that equipment, so I don't think it's really relevant. Finished 14th at Kansas earlier in the season, 15th at Michigan. Probably going to contend around 15th, 20th place. That's not bad at his price point for where he's starting. I think he's just fine as a cheaper PD play, but I do think Ty Gibbs has better finishing position upside in tournaments and might be a little bit lower owned. Dropping down to the 6K range, Chris Buescher, who was very impressive in practice, unfortunately qualified 10th, which makes him kind of tough to play because I feel like this is a bit of a ceiling for Buescher at a track like this because if you're looking at his finishes at these track types this year, it hasn't all been that great. 16th at Michigan's the best one we've seen lately. 31st, 26th, 27th, 18th, 35th. I have a really hard time getting to Buescher outside of 150 max tournaments. Michael McDowell, $6,700. He's starting in 23rd, basically qualified right where he practiced. Not expecting too much improvement here. 23rd at Kansas, 20th at Michigan. Probably going to pass on Almirola, or Michael McDowell, I should say. Not passing on Almirola. Huge fan of him this week. He is starting dead last in 36. Just did not make a qualifying lap, but should contend for a top 25. As long as he doesn't wreck, I'll be happy with whatever Almirola does. Now, is there pivots in tournaments? Sure, but these cheap plays really aren't that great this week, so I'm expecting some extremely high ownership on guys like Almirola and Stenhouse, and I mean, you just group them together. These are two of the best cheap plays on the site. If you're playing cash games, there's no really way around it. You're just plugging both in. Stenhouse did make a qualifying lap, but he pretty much limped it across the track. He did not have much to show for it. He scraped the ball in practice. I believe that's what it was, and just wanted to see what happened when they put it on the track, so we just kind of limped around, but 25th, 23rd, 15th in practice. The issue happened at the very end there, but starting in 35th. He's actually shown top 15 upside at these track types this year, so I'll be playing a lot of both of these guys to make things work up top. If you're looking for pivots, you have Noah Gragson, you have Cole Custer here, but I would rather just eat the chalk. But looking at Gragson, 24th in the 1 lap in practice, 18th in the 5 lap. Not bad. Like in tournaments, sure, I'll get to some of these guys, but they're not going to project as well. Cole Custer starting in 29th wasn't very impressive in practice. Looking at his numbers at these track types this year, 31st in Michigan, 19th, 21st, 22nd, 11th at Auto Club. He's okay. Like if Almirola and Stenhouse did not exist, I would actually probably get behind playing some Custer this week, and it's just tough to play him when you have Almirola and Stenhouse who usually run better starting spots further back. But I'm not going to say Custer's a bad play. It's just he's bad compared to Stenhouse and Almirola. Dropping down to the 5K guys, no one really stands out besides Justin Haley. Harrison Burton did show some speed in practice, but even then, it's kind of short-lived once we get to the long run speeds here. But Ty Dillon starting a little bit too high for my liking. Probably pass on that. Harrison Burton starting a bit too high, like 10th in the 1 lap in practice, but then falls off to 21st, 17th, 14th. But for Justin Haley, didn't fall off as bad where he was 8th in the 1 lap, but then 9th in the 5 lap. He's starting all the way back in 27th. If you need a real cheap play in the 5K range, he is the one I would definitely go for because all these other guys look like some pretty bad plays in my opinion. Gillen starting in the back, but he always does. He's probably going to be slow. 30th in the 1 lap, 26th in the 5 lap. Not excited about that. Much rather play Haley. LaJoy is starting way too high for me. I can't really play anybody else. Castle, too slow. Ware, McLeod, Yaley, all too slow. Unless there's a bunch of wrecks, like a Charlotte or something. Maybe that's when it can work out because we saw Ware finish 18th and McLeod 19th in that race. But unless there's mass chaos, I don't really see either of those guys working out too much. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys this weekend. I appreciate everybody still here, even with football season going on. You guys are the real troopers, especially if you made it all the way through. Don't forget to check out the extra content if you want over on Patreon, including the NFL stuff that we got going on full force right now. We have week 1 coming right up. If you're watching this on Sunday, probably got a couple hours until kickoff, so hopefully looking forward to all of that. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. I wish you all the best of luck. Unfortunately, no live stream this weekend, so I will not see you tomorrow, but I'll still see you in the comments section if you want to come in and say hi.